Hello, my name is Mina and today I wanted to talk about the books that I read in the first half of November. I decided to split my wrap up into two just because I found that I was reading quite a lot and I don't want the videos to be too long, and I also want to give myself enough time to talk about each book. So I did read 6 books in the first half of the month and I'll just go through them in the order in which I read them. The first book that I read is Heretics of June by Frank Herbert. This is the 5th book in the series, and I think I've mentioned previously, I've been slowly making my way through the series this year. I have 1 book left of the books that I intend to read. I know there's a more expansive series, but I'm not doing that. But I did really enjoy this one. I think this is probably my favourite one, besides maybe the first one. I found the story really interesting. I like the characters. I like the fact that we got to see more of the world. I don't want to say too much about it just because it is the 5th in the series and quite a lot changes from the beginning to this point, but I think just the general premise of all the books, they're set far into the future where humanity is involved to rely on this drug, is that the right word? Rely on something called spice or melange, which is produced on a planet called Arrakis, and so control of the planet Arrakis is quite sought after, and we just follow how this civilization evolves over time. The next book I read was Green Days by the River by Michael Anthony. This is a book that is set in Trinidad and it's written by a Trinidadian author. It was given to me by one of my friends who is from Trinidad. I enjoyed this book. It follows a 15-year-old boy called Shell who is kind of on the cusp of adulthood. His dad's quite unwell. Never quite said specifically, but it sounds like he's suffering with heart failure at the same time as trying to deal with his dad's illness. He's also trying to navigate, his early relationships. There are 2 girls that he finds himself interested in, and we watch how that all plays out. And it's an interesting ending. The things I really enjoyed about this book were the descriptions of the natural environment. Just made me want to be in a tropical country eating lots of fresh fruit, and I would recommend it. The main criticism I do have of it is that there are a few key scenes it kind of glosses over, which is a bit weird because everything else is described so richly and so tangibly, and then some key things happen, and at some point I found myself kind of flicking back thinking I must have not taken in some information properly, or maybe skipped a page, and no, he just didn't write. He just skipped over them and we kind of got to see the consequences but not what actually happened, and I found that a bit of a strange choice. But overall I think it's definitely worth a read. It's very short, it's just about 200 pages long, so it's a really easy read. The next book I read is The Arrival by Sean Tan. So this is a silent graphic novel. This book follows the journey of an immigrant who moves to a new world, leaving his family behind, and in this new city there's new foods and new customs and a new language, and there's nothing that he really understands, and he's really helped along this journey by other people that he meets. So we find out about where these people that help him came from initially, their journeys that they took, the types of oppression that they faced, them arriving in this new place and having the same struggles that he had, but showing that it is possible to adapt, and them helping him in that journey to adapt to this new world. And it's just a lovely, really, really beautiful book. The artwork is stunning. I'm going to find a different page. So I think last time I'm just going to show this, so this is just a random page, and it's all done in these sepia. Is that sepia? Is that the right term? Just show another page. It's just lovely. There's no writing in it at all, so I think that's supposed to give you as the reader that same sense of not quite understanding the language, not quite understanding the customs, and you really do feel what that person arriving somewhere completely new and strange feels, where you're looking at the writing and you don't understand what's written either, you don't understand what any of the symbols mean, you don't understand the food, you don't even understand the dangers that they've had to face, because it's not something that you can relate to at all. And I just think it's such a beautiful book, and it's one that I think everyone should have a copy of and go through and just appreciate Sean Tan's work. The next book that I read is The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. I really liked this. and I was expecting to like it. I was a bit worried initially because I know the reviews I've seen of it have been mixed. I know there's some people that have really liked it and some people that have found it a bit disappointing. I knew exactly how the book was going to end and I didn't mind. I sat down and my intention was just to read maybe the first chapter just to get me going, and I couldn't put it down. I read it from the beginning to end in one sitting. The book is about a young woman who is struggling with her mental health and decides that she wants to take her own life. She wakes up in a place called the Midnight Library. In this Midnight Library, she gets the opportunity to try on other lives that she could have had if she had made different decisions. So she works through her regrets, and then eventually, I don't want to say more actually, and I knew exactly where it was going to go, but at the same time it's written in such an easy to get through way. The lives are so entertaining, but at the same time you kind of know the realizations that she has to go through, and ultimately the end of the book is really beautiful and I really liked it, and I knew that's how it was going to end, because if it ended any other way then it wouldn't be as good. The next book I read is a non-fiction book called Also Human: The Inner Lives of Doctors by Caroline Elton. This is a book that I borrowed from my dad. It's a psychologist who has over the years been working with lots of doctors who have been struggling with their mental health, either prior to becoming doctors or as a result of working in the medical field, and it explores lots of different aspects of this. So I found some of it quite relatable in terms of especially relating to when you're not sure as a doctor whether or not the career is the right one for you, because you obviously had to make this decision when you were 15 or 16 and you've been working towards it for so long, and then you're in your late 20s or you're in your early 30s, you're living a decision that you made in your teens and you're having to deal with a lot of stress. I was very lucky in where I work, in the sense that I worked in really supportive environments and with really good people, and in this book you learn that not everyone has that opportunity. It made me reflect a lot on like my own life and my own choices, because even despite having such a nice working environment, working with really good people, I've still really struggled with it. And so I really identified with some of the cases in here, you know, trying to decide whether or not that's a path that I want to continue in. And the fact that even just trying to make that decision, if you feel like staying in medicine isn't necessarily the right thing for you, it can feel like such a hard decision because you've invested so much time and so much energy. There aren't many careers that are like medicine, because it's a very strange world. You're exposed to so much of the human experience and you're in such a position of privilege, but at the same time it comes with such a lot of responsibility and it can be a lot to shoulder. I gave it 3 stars because I think it goes off on some tangents, and while it did introduce some really interesting things, I feel like that there was a lot of exploration that wasn't done and it was really unfocused at times. I think for a non-fiction book like this, it would be important to either stick to case studies and, you know, tell us about what her patients or these doctors have been feeling and what they've said themselves, or, you know, focus more on statistics. Basically, there were a lot of assumptions that I felt she made that I couldn't see how she got there based on what her patients had said to her. In the end, I did enjoy reading it, and I'm glad I read it because the parts that I could reflect on have made me think really hard on what I want to do next and what kind of decisions I want to make about my life going forward now that I've finished my foundation training and I don't really feel ready to move on to whatever comes next in medical training, and the anxiety that comes with that decision. And I think I still would recommend, if you're a doctor, especially if you're a junior doctor or a doctor who is struggling to decide what you want to do career-wise, reading this, just because it can help you understand that, one, you're not alone and that there are other people who are having similar struggles. Because when you work in the medical profession, it can be very easy to feel like you're the only one that's struggling and everyone else is just acing through it all, and yeah, other people are going through similar struggles. The final book that I read in the first half of November is Where the Forest Meets the Stars by Glendy Vendera. So this is a book about a woman who's in remission from breast cancer. She's also recently lost her mum from breast cancer as well. She is an ornithologist who's currently completing her PhD, so she moves to a really rural part of America to research the birds. I don't know the details about it. When she comes back from her work one day, she finds a little girl in her garden who tells her that she has been sent from the stars and her name is Ursa Major. Ursa repeatedly returns into this woman's life and they form quite a close bond and a relationship. Ursa tells her that she is there to witness 5 miracles, and once she has seen these 5 miracles, she should return to her home planet. And it's a really lovely book. I really enjoyed this book. I love the characters within the book. I love the relationships that they formed with each other, and it was a really heartwarming book, kind of seeing Ursa's story and how it all comes together at the end. I thought it was really brilliant, especially in the relationship between Ursa and the main protagonist, who is, I've forgotten her name, Joanna. The part of the book that made me really uncomfortable is there is another character who is a man who lives just down the road from Joanna, and he also gets involved in Ursa's life. I struggled with Joanna's relationship with him, and more specifically in the way that she addresses his mental illness. So he's a man who's not been able to complete his university and has had to come back home because while he was there he started struggling with agoraphobia and depression, and so he had to move back home and he hasn't been able to really go back out there since then. On the one hand, the author shows some insight into understanding that other people don't always understand what it's like for someone who has a mental illness, and that sometimes they can make comments that can be quite insensitive. And while she highlights this, at the same time, Joanna doesn't, I don't know, there's some scenes in there that were quite weird to read in how she addresses his mental illness. So for example, there's a scene, this isn't a spoiler, there's a scene where, so he's got a beard, and he has this beard because he feels like it helps him hide his face, and she just decides to shave it off for him. Just like that. Just the way it was she handled it, I didn't think was right. I don't know. There was something about it that was a bit icky. The whole romantic side of it was also a bit cringe. I don't read a lot of romance anyway, but Ursa Major, one of my favourite children characters in a book. And I might have cried a little bit while reading it. Those are the books that I've read so far in November. I have completed 2 more books, but they were in the second half, so I'll do them in the end of month wrap up. I'm going to film the rest of the video right now because I'm going to be travelling home next week, and I can't believe my time in Qatar has gone so quickly. I haven't made it through my TBR. I don't think I'm going to make it through my Qatar TBR, but I think I hopefully should be able to get through those books from that video by the end of the year. So yes, I shall see you in my next video. Thank you for watching.